He was a practicing psychologist in Los Angeles in the 1950s, and the Bridie Murphy case happened.
Oh, sure. Huge case.
Huge case. It was a woman who remembered a past life in Ireland, and Time magazine, they all covered it. And so psychologists started getting calls from people saying, hey, I want to do a past life regression.
Yeah.
And he said, I don't believe in it. I just don't, it's not, I don't think it's worthwhile. So then he had this client, which is the story he was telling. Guy came in with a psychosomatic illness, a pain in his shoulder that no doctor could identify.
He was getting a little ahead of me. It was actually a little deeper than I thought. And he jumped into the past life as a soldier in World War I. And he was being bayoneted. When it was all over, he said he was feeling better already, and he called me a few days later and he said, there's no more pain. My wife really wants to thank you. Well, I wasn't satisfied with that. I didn't tell him this, but I contacted the British War Office and the Imperial Museum in London. Sure enough, there was such a person, and he existed, and he died in 1916. So from that case, I began taking past life clients, and so I came kicking and screaming into this movement.
And in the case of, of examining it, he gave him the command, let's go to the source of your illness. And he jumped into this past life of a soldier in World War I who was being bayoneted.
Yep, right there.
Right there. But Newton's reaction was interesting. He didn't believe him. So he started grilling this poor guy. What was your mother's maiden name? What unit were you in?
Yeah.
Who was your roommate?
And he's writing all this down.
He's writing all this down.
Yeah.
And as Newton said, the poor guy's lying there being in pain as he's being bayoneted. And eventually he did take him out of that. But when he was done with the session, that's when he sent the stuff off to the British War Office, and they wrote back and said, yes, indeed, that is the case.
This is what happened.
Right. So
it's mind-boggling.
It's mind-boggling. When I came across it, listen, it's like any scientific thing. It's either true or it's not. And I thought, well, for me to prove that it's true, I would have to take individuals like yourself, like myself, let's say, and I'll film them so that people can see for themselves whether or not someone's interjecting questions or leading or doing any of that stuff.
So let's take some questions for you, all right?
Right.
Rich Martini, questions from you on the afterlife. Who's got one?
Anyone?
Yes.
Have you ever had a past life experience?
Have you ever had one yourself?
Well, that's a great question. I've done 2 now. And I've done 2 because the first session was so mind-blowing. About 2 years later, I thought, it couldn't possibly have been that real. And so I went back and did another session, and they sort of verified everything that happened. In the first session, I was determined, as a journalist, not to be led by the hypnotherapist. That's the great fear, that you're under hypnosis and they're going to say, don't you see yourself on the Titanic? Are you in
Pushing
Egypt?
you? That's right.
Are you anywhere near
Are you
Cleopatra?
in that craft?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what you're afraid of. But so I was determined that no matter what happened, I would not say that I saw something or heard something or sensed something unless it was actually accurate. And so the hypnotherapist, the process is they take you through your current life. So you remember things that, of course, you do remember. But you remember them in a visceral way. It's very interesting because I remembered cutting my finger when I was 11. I sliced this open.
Ouch.
And I could see the blood and feel it. And I was thinking, oh, this is funny. And then I started talking in an emotional way like a 12-year-old would. So I was aware of that, oh, it's interesting, I'm tapping into this person.
You are a believer now, beyond any shadow of a doubt.
Well, yes, absolutely. So I did find myself, when they ask you, could you go to a previous existence that has some significance to this one? And I kept saying, I don't see anything, I don't see anything. And then he finally said, well, just look down. And I looked down and I saw my feet in some water. And then I saw myself in buckskin. And then I laughed because then I saw that I was an American Indian. And I laughed as a filmmaker. That's what you're going to come up with. And so then I said that I was a Lakota, a shaman, a medicine man. And I laughed at that too, because I thought, oh, please, you saw Dances with Wolves. I mean, that's why you're... And then he asked me what was my name, and I said, it sounds like Tatanka. Now, Tatanka, I saw the movie, it means buffalo.
That's right.
But I said, it's Watanka. And then he asked me to go to my tribe, and I said, I don't want to do that. And then he said, why? And I said, and then I saw that everyone was murdered. Everyone was dead. And I felt that emotion of seeing a crowd of your friends dead. And I was thinking to myself, if I'm making this up, why am I feeling this? And then I went to literally a teepee. I felt the skin, pulling it open. And I saw this woman lying on the ground. And I said, they've killed my wife, and they've taken my son. And you feel that emotion of that.
And to know you went through that at
Well,
one time,
or to imagine you went through it, but it's odd to feel that stress of
That's pretty
that
vivid.
emotion. You see? So I was consciously going, well, this is weird. If you're making this up, why are you experiencing it? So then he asked, who did this to your tribe? And I said, it was the goddamn Huron. And as I said it, I thought, wait a minute, the Huron, they're in upstate New York. The Sioux are in Montana. Like, you're all over the map. So I let it go. And I'll tell you that about a year later, I was at a funeral in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. One of my aunts passed away, and I was talking to my cousin, Hayes Callahan. I'm sorry, Coyne Callahan Jr., and his brother of Hayes. And he said that he was a Lakota Sioux historian, something I didn't know about him at all.
There you go, yeah.
And I said, well, let me tell you, I had this weird thing. And he said, wait, before you begin, just tell me, what were you wearing? I said, well, I was wearing buckskin. He said, did you have any feathers? I said, yeah, there were 2. He said, were they up or were they down? I said, they were down. He said, well, that means you were a medicine man.
Interesting.
I said, well, then why, what was my name? What did that mean? Watanka. And he said, well, that's what they called their medicine men, because Wakantanka means the Great Spirit.
And you had no idea.
I had no idea. I couldn't even look it up.
Yeah.
I tried. And then
You
I
spelled
said,
it wrong.
I said, then what's this about me saying the Huron and the Sioux, were fighting? And he said, you're sitting in the spot where they fought for 60 years.
Wow.
Those are details I couldn't have gotten from cryptomnesia, which is what science calls
there's no way.
hypnotherapy. There was no way. So for myself, yes,